The Aurora's edge drifted in silence against the shimmer of a dying star, its hull reflecting pale crimson light that pulsed like the final heartbeat of a giant long dead. Captain Arya Vance stood on the bridge, hands clasped behind her back, her gaze fixed on the orbital anomaly ahead. It hung there, a fractured ring of alloy and stone, impossibly old yet unmistakably crafted. The scanners reported negligible energy signatures, but its scale was undeniable, a monument adrift in solitude, orbiting the dim ember of a star that should have collapsed ages ago. Aria's voice carried a controlled steadiness. "Bring us closer, 100 meters at a time. No sudden thrusts." She was aware her crew's nerves were stretched taut, and her own pulse matched the steady blinking of the sensor feed. First contact might have already occurred in ways they could not measure, and a single reckless move might tip fate. Sergeant Marco Silva shifted beside the weapons console, his jaw tight. "Captain, with respect, the thing's been dead for who knows how long. No telling what kind of traps or radiation it's throwing off. I recommend keeping distance until we got better data." His tone was clipped, military precise, but beneath it lingered unease. Dr. Elias Tran, leaning over the console with a gleam in his eyes, barely glanced at the sergeant. "Radiation levels are stable, and structurally, this is miraculous. Look at those etchings, Captain, layered inscriptions, recursive in form. This isn't a ruin. It's a record. It survived stellar decay. If anything can outlast extinction, it's this." His voice carried the passion of a scholar who had chased ghosts all his life. Arya weighed them both, a commander caught between instinct for caution and the tug of discovery. Humanity's unified council hadn't sent the Aurora's edge to skirt around history. They had sent her to seize it, interpret it, and carry its lessons back to Earth. She exhaled slowly. "Prepare the shuttle. We'll go in." The derelict loomed larger as they approached, its outer edges scarred by impacts that looked less like erosion and more like deliberate strikes. Jagged seams ran across the hull, as though something had clawed through it, tearing steel like paper. Inside, corridors stretched in concentric patterns, spiraling toward a hollow core. Aria's boots clicked against ancient alloy as her team stepped from the shuttle, the sound swallowed almost instantly by the stillness. "Unbelievable," Elias whispered, running his gloved fingers across the surface of a wall. Tiny grooves pulsed faintly beneath the dust, as if the material itself remembered being alive. "These are memory strata. The Ketheri encoded language in their architecture. If I can map this properly, we'll be able to reconstruct fragments of their history." Marco swept his rifle across the darkness, every sense sharpened. If their history ends here, maybe we shouldn't be so eager to repeat it. He kept his voice low, yet his suspicion filled the space more than Elias's excitement. Arya didn't answer. She pressed forward, guiding the team deeper. Each chamber they passed revealed remnants, skeletal frameworks of alien devices, crystalline fragments that might once have been conduits, walls blackened with scars that told of violence. It was not time that had killed this place, but an enemy. The thought gnawed at her as much as the silence. At the heart of the structure, they found a core chamber, vast and echoing, lined with obelisks etched in patterns that shifted when viewed from different angles. Elias hurried toward one, activating his portable scanner, eyes alight with wonder. This isn't a tomb. It's a message, a deliberate construction meant to be found. His words rose with intensity. "Captain, they wanted us to see this." Arya opened her mouth to reply, but the chamber itself answered first. A tremor rippled through the floor, subtle at first, then growing into a low resonance. Symbols across the obelisks flared to life, casting the chamber in pale violet light. The air vibrated with sound that was not sound, a layered tone that pressed against the skull, bypassing language and striking directly into instinct. Marco swung his weapon up. "It's waking up." Elias shook his head furiously. "Not waking, it's transmitting. Listen." His voice quivered with awe. "It's a warning." The resonance built into a rhythmic pulse, like a heartbeat that had waited millennia to be heard. Shapes unfolded across the chamber walls. Fleets of vast ships consuming stars, worlds darkening under a tide of fire, and silhouettes of beings that moved like shadows given form. At their approach, the Ketheri symbols faltered, unraveling into broken fragments. Elias translated in halting whispers as the projection shifted. They called them the Sorin, devourers, not conquerors, not colonizers. They consume civilizations until nothing remains. The Kethri resisted, but they lost. This was their last record. His voice cracked at the final words, reverence mingled with terror. Arya felt the weight of silence close, and once more, heavier than before. A civilization had poured its dying breath into a beacon not of triumph, but of desperation, casting into void for anyone to hear. And humanity had answered. Captain, Marco said quietly, eyes scanning the shifting images, if those things are still out there, we're not ready. Hell, we're barely holding ourselves together back home. Maybe the smart move is to wipe our records and pretend we never saw this. Elias spun on him, eyes blazing. You'd erase the last testament of an entire people? Let their voices vanish completely? If we do that, then the Kethri died twice. Arya raised a hand, silencing them both. Her own thoughts churned with conflict. Duty demanded she return this knowledge to Earth Command. Survival urged her to consider Marco's warning. Yet she could not unsee what she'd seen, the shadow that had crushed the Kethri, and the possibility it still lurked beyond known stars. The resonance faded slowly, the chamber dimming until only their suit lights remained. The last pulse of violet flickered and vanished, leaving behind an emptiness that felt like an exhaled breath. The obelisks grew cold again, silent once more, as if exhausted from the effort of being heard. Back aboard the Aurora's edge, the bridge was tense with anticipation. Transmission logs filled with encoded bursts from the derelict. Fragments Elias insisted could be decrypted fully. Arya forwarded the package to Earth Command, her message clipped but urgent. We have found evidence of a prior civilization's destruction. The threat may persist. Advise. Her words vanished into the relay, but unease lingered. She stood again before the stars, staring at the derelict shrinking into the distance. The silence of space no longer felt empty. It felt watchful. Somewhere, beyond the fading light of a dying star, something ancient might have stirred at the act of being remembered. And though no alarm sounded, no hostile ship appeared, Arya felt with chilling certainty that humanity had just stepped into a story far larger than themselves. The first chapter was written, and the next would not wait long to unfold. The encrypted bursts from the derelict consumed the Aurora's edge for days, filling the ship with the ceaseless hum of translation attempts. Dr. Elias Tran barely left his console, sustained only by ration bars and a feverish need to pry meaning from the Kethri symbols. Captain Arya Vance allowed him his obsession. If anyone could turn echoes into a coherent warning, it was Elias. Yet each passing hour tightened the knot in her chest. The silence of space felt thinner now, like a fabric frayed by unseen hands. When the breakthrough came, it did not arrive gently. Elias's voice cracked through the bridge with a sharp tremor of disbelief. I have it. Not all of it, but enough. He summoned a projection. Alien fleets consumed in fire, a tide of black-armored leviathans advancing with merciless rhythm. His translation carried the brittle weight of horror. The Sorin Dominion. They do not trade. They do not negotiate. They do not enslave. They harvest. Entire civilizations stripped of memory, culture, and life, reduced to resources. The Kethri called them the Devourers of Dawn. Sergeant Marco Silva leaned forward, knuckles whitening against the console. Then we turn around and burn our engines until that graveyard is a smear on the scanners. We're explorers, not soldiers. This is beyond us. Arya's eyes lingered on the projection, the way the Kethri symbols stuttered into static before fading into silence. And if they return Marco, do we hide and wait for Earth to face what the Kethri couldn't stop? Her voice carried the sharp edge of command, but beneath it was a gnawing dread of truth. The decision was not hers alone for long. A summons reached them from the Mirren Compact, a coalition of alien species whose signals had intercepted Earth's transmission. Against protocol, Arya accepted the invitation, the coordinates directing them to a neutral station hidden within the shroud of a gas giant. The station was a cathedral of glass and steel, suspended above a storm that raged with colors unseen on Earth. Inside, the delegation awaited them. The Mirren were slender beings with crystalline exoskeletons, their voices layered like chords struck in resonance. Alongside them were others, scaled Thrissan diplomats, and a hollow-eyed Veari whose translucent skin revealed pulses of pale light within. To Arya, their presence was staggering. Humanity had long speculated about alien life, but to stand among them, to hear them breathe the same air, was to feel the axis of history tilt beneath her feet. A Mirran elder, refracting light in somber hues, addressed her first. "Children of Sol, you are unwise to unearth shadows. The Sorin dominion stirs once more. We have watched the signs. You have drawn their gaze." Arya held her ground, voice steady. "If they are returning, then you've lived with this fear far longer than we have. Why hide? Why wait to be devoured?" The chamber shifted with dissonant murmurs. A Thrissan envoy bared sharp teeth in what might have been a grimace. "You misunderstand. Resistance is impossible. The Sorin do not fall. We survive only by yielding, offering tribute, abandoning colonies, scattering like dust until their hunger moves on. Defiance is suicide." Elias stepped forward, his eyes alight with disbelief. "So you consign yourselves to being cattle? The Kethri tried to resist alone, yes, but what if the compact fought together?" The Veari speaker pulsed dimly, as though their inner light waned. "We are not Kethri, nor are we human. We have endured by remembering the futility of struggle. To resist is to vanish." Arya saw the tension ripple through her crew. Marco's jaw tightened, his every instinct echoing the aliens' warnings. Yet Elias's expression burned with defiance. The council chamber had revealed more than a history of fear. It had laid bare the fracture between survival and dignity. When the session ended in stalemate, the Aurora's edge departed heavy with disillusionment. Arya sat in her ready room, the weight of command pressing harder than ever. She could retreat, obey the wisdom of elder civilizations, and consign Earth to patient submission. Or she could reject the chorus of fear and wager humanity's untested strength against the tide. Neither choice promised survival. The Sorin's arrival did not wait for deliberation. Their scout ship emerged from a void like a shadow peeling itself free from darkness. Sleek, angular, bristling with unknown weaponry, it fell upon Aurora's edge without warning. The bridge shuddered under first barrage, consoles flaring with sparks, the crew thrown into chaos. "Shields collapsing," someone shouted. Marco seized a moment, barking commands with the certainty of a soldier who had been waiting for inevitability. Evasive maneuvers. Bring weapons online, make them bleed if we can. But Arya's mind raced past instinct. To meet the Sorin with brute force was folly. Their vessel dwarfed hers, its weapons etched from centuries of conquest. Yet she remembered the derelict, the way the Kethri's desperation had been woven into patterns of light. They had failed by fighting on the enemy's terms. Humanity had no such obligation. "Divert auxiliary power to the engines," she ordered. "Reroute navigation through the maintenance grid. Prepare gravitic pulse." Her crew hesitated, the plan untested, but her authority held. The Aurora's edge darted erratically, weaving through the scout's fire, bleeding sparks across the void. At her signal, the gravitic pulse discharged, not as a weapon but as distortion. Space itself warped, and the Sorin's targeting arrays faltered for a heartbeat. It was enough. Marco's missile struck the enemy's flank, not to destroy, but to disorient. The Aurora's edge fled into maelstrom of a nearby nebula, its silhouette swallowed by storms of ionized gas. The Sorin did not pursue. Perhaps they had not expected prey to slip their grasp. Breathing heavily, Arya scanned the shaken faces around her. Survival had been purchased not with firepower, but with imagination. Yet the cost was not victory. The enemy now knew humanity existed. The Dominion would not forget. Elias broke the silence, voice raw. "You saw it, didn't you? We can fight them. Not like the others, on our terms. That's what makes us different." Marco slammed a fist against the console. "Different? We just painted a target on Earth the size of the moon. They'll come, Captain, and when they do, we won't outrun them." Arya felt both truths coil within her. Humanity had survived where others would have surrendered, but survival had placed them on a path that could not be abandoned. The Sorin had tasted resistance for the first time in centuries. They would return, as the nebulous storm wrapped around them. Hiding the ship from pursuit, Arya closed her eyes and let the weight settle fully. The Compact had chosen submission. The Ketheri had chosen defiance and perished. Humanity now stood at the fulcrum between those choices, with no path left untouched by ruin. When she opened her eyes again, the decision had already formed. She would not let Earth bow before predators, nor let the Ketheri's warning vanish into silence. Whatever came next, humanity would face it not as prey, but as a people willing to carve their defiance into the stars themselves. The storm of the nebula faded behind them, but the shadow of the Sorin lingered in every silence aboard the Aurora's edge. Earth Command had received their report and responded with grim brevity. Return with haste. Your findings will be addressed at the Council. The phrasing told Arya everything she needed to know. Humanity had stepped into a firestorm, and the politicians back home will be just as divided as the alien coalition they had left behind. The Council convened in orbit above Earth, a station ringed with banners of every nation that had once stood apart but now shared one fragile destiny. Arya and her crew stood beneath the gaze of admirals, ministers, and envoys. The chamber hummed with contention before she even spoke. "We found the truth," she began, her voice clear despite the weight pressing on her. "The Ketheri did not die to time. They died to an enemy that feeds on civilizations. The Sorin Dominion has returned, and they know who we are." Elias stepped forward, displaying fragments of decoded projections. "They're not myths, not exaggerations. Their tactics are precise. They strip cultures bare and erase them from memory. The Compact believes survival means submission, but submission is only a slower death." Murmurs rippled across the chamber. Some envoys demanded fortifications. Others retreat. A general slammed his fist on the table. "We're not ready for open war. One ship survived by accident. We cannot gamble the entire species on defiance." Marco's reply came with the force of conviction. "It wasn't an accident. We survived because we're unpredictable. We don't follow the patterns they expect. That's our weapon, even if no one else sees it yet." The debate raged, but Arya cut through it with a steady calm that silenced the hall. "If we do nothing, we will end as the Ketheri did, silent and forgotten. If survival means living as prey, then we have already surrendered. We cannot fight them as they fight us, but we can make them bleed, make them doubt. That begins now." Her words did not win unanimous support, but they planted a seed. Humanity was small, fragile compared to galactic powers, yet their refusal to yield stirred something long buried in others. For the first time, whispers of rebellion against the Dominion spread through the Compact's ranks. Their chants came swiftly. A Sorin fleet moved toward the Epsilon Gate, a wormhole nexus through which trade and travel for half the galaxy flowed. If it fell, the Dominion would carve a path into every settled system. The Compact prepared to abandon it, repeating their age-old ritual of retreat. Humanity refused. The Aurora's edge was joined by a hastily assembled fleet of Earth's first warships, crude but bristling with ingenuity. A handful of Mirran and Thrissan vessels lingered on the fringes, uncertain but unwilling to turn away completely. The Dominion arrived with overwhelming force. Ships like obsidian daggers blotting out starlight, weapons shimmering with energy older than Earth's nations. The first volley shattered shields in scattered formation. Marco barked orders with iron precision, rallying the fleet into unpredictable maneuvers. "Don't give them a pattern. Make every move cost them calculation." His voice carried a steadiness that steadied others. Elias hunched over his console, frantic with discovery. "I've cracked more of the Ketheri archive. Listen, the Sorin's command relays are rigid, centralized. Their strength is also their weakness. If we sever the control lattice, their fleet fragments, but the node is buried deep. Arya's decision was immediate. Then we go through." The battle churned into chaos. Human ships hurled asteroids into the Dominion's path, forcing them to waste fire on rubble. Smaller craft sacrificed themselves to overload enemy weapons. What others called desperation, humanity called resolve. For every vessel lost, another exploited the gap. At the heart of the maelstrom, Marco led a strike group directly toward the node vessel, its surface bristling with armaments. His voice came through the comms, clipped but steady. "If this works, They'll never forget us. The strike tore into the Dominion's lattice. Elias shouted confirmation, his voice shaking with relief. Their formation, it's collapsing. They can't coordinate. For the first time, the Sorin faltered. The Dominion ships pulled back, not destroyed, but disrupted, their advance arrested. Against an enemy they had considered beneath notice. They had bled. Silence filled the comms as the fleet regrouped, debris drifting in the wake of the battle. Losses were heavy, but the gate still stood. And in the eyes of every surviving crew, something unshakable had taken root. On the bridge of the Aurora's Edge, Arya stood among her battered crew. Elias slumped in exhaustion, Marco's armor scorched and cracked, but both alive, both unbroken. She looked through the viewport at the scarred but intact wormhole. "They'll return," Marco said, his tone grim. "Yes," Arya replied, her voice quiet but fierce. "But next time, they'll know we won't kneel." Elias lifted his head, eyes burning with conviction. "And maybe others will rise with us." The Ketheri's message wasn't just a warning. It was a call. They wanted someone to finish the fight they couldn't. Arya let the words settle. Humanity had entered the stars as explorers, but they had been forged into something else. The spark of resistance. The Dominion had faced countless civilizations, but never one that fought with the reckless determination of a species that had clawed itself out of extinction on its own world. The Council would debate, the Compact would hesitate, and the Sorin would return in greater force. Yet as the Aurora's Edge turned toward Earth, battered but unbowed, Arya knew the future no longer belonged to fear. Humanity had shown that defiance was possible, and in doing so, they had rewritten the rules of survival. The war was only beginning, but for the first time in centuries, the galaxy had hope. And hope, Arya thought as the stars stretched into motion, was the one weapon the Dominion could never devour. The celebrations on Earth were muted, overshadowed by grief as much as pride. Humanity had endured its first clash with the Sorin, and emerged scarred but standing. Yet the list of the dead scrolled endlessly across news feeds. In every city, memorials lit the night skies, faces of the fallen projected in silver light. Captain Arya Van stood at the edge of one such gathering in New Alexandria, surrounded by families who stared at her with a mixture of reverence and unspoken accusation. She had led them into defiance, but defiance had demanded its price. Inside the council chamber, the mood was equally divided. Admirals, ministers, and scientists filled the seats, their arguments clashing like storms. Some hailed the victory at Epsilon Gate as the dawn of a new era, proof that humanity could stand among the stars not merely as explorers, but as leaders. Others called it reckless provocation, a gamble that had invited extinction. Arya listened in silence, her jaw set, aware that every decision she made was now dissected under the scalpel of politics. Elias Tran spoke when called, his voice steady but tinged with exhaustion. The Ketheri archives make it clear the Sorin's hunger is relentless. They adapt, they learn. We cannot expect the same trick, to succeed twice. But we can expect them to return. His words carried the weight of certainty, forged from sleepless nights poring over alien data. He was no longer the wide-eyed scholar chasing mysteries. The battle had burned hesitation from him, leaving only resolve. Sergeant Marco Silva, summoned to give his account, leaned into the microphone with arms folded. We fought because we had no other choice. We survived because we refused to fight like them. If we keep waiting for permission or consensus, we'll hand them the galaxy without a fight. The Sorin aren't coming for peace treaties. They're coming to erase us. The chamber erupted again, voices raised in argument, some demanding alliances with the Mirren Compact, others pushing for isolation. Arya finally rose, her voice cutting through the noise with the sharpness of command. The question is not whether the Sorin will return. The question is whether we will face them as one species, united, or fall apart before they even fire a shot. Her words silenced the chamber, but she saw in her eyes the truth. Unity was fragile, ambition and fear gnawing at its edges. Humanity had taken its first step onto the galactic stage, but the ground beneath them was unsteady. That night, Arya met Elias and Marco in her quarters aboard the Aurora's Edge. The ship was under repair, its scars a map of the battle they had endured, but its heart still beat strong. Elias spread a series of holographic projections across the table. fragments of decoded Ketheri warnings, star charts annotated with strange symbols. His fingers traced a pattern with obsessive precision. "There's something the Council didn't hear," he said quietly. "The Ketheri spoke of a crucible, a place where the Soren's power was forged, a nexus of their strength, buried deep in uncharted space. If it exists, it could be their vulnerability." Marco frowned, suspicion etched into every line of his face. "Or it's bait, a dead end that killed the Ketheri chasing it. Or," Elias countered, his eyes alight with conviction, "it's the one chance they had to wound the Dominion. They couldn't reach it, but maybe we can. If we wait for the Soren to come again, they'll choose the battlefield. If we go to the Crucible, we might finally seize the initiative." Arya studied them both. Marco's pragmatism had kept him alive. Elias's determination had uncovered truths no one else would see. Both were right in their own way, and both demanded a choice. She felt the weight of it press on her, like the cold of space itself. To chase the Crucible meant risking everything on a rumor. To remain meant waiting for annihilation. Her gaze shifted to the viewport, where Earth gleamed blue and fragile against the dark. She thought of the families in memorial squares, the names etched into silence, and the way even the Mirren envoys had lingered at the edge of battle rather than flee. Humanity's defiance had kindled something beyond themselves. The Ketheri had left a message not just as a warning, but as a torch, meant to be carried forward. "We can't wait for Soren to choose our fate," she said finally, her voice low but unyielding. "If the Crucible exists, we'll find it. And if it doesn't, then we'll carve our own path through whatever lies ahead." Marco exhaled sharply, half in frustration, half in resignation. "You're going to get us all killed." Yet even as he spoke, his eyes hardened with resolve. He had followed her into the jaws of the Dominion once, and he would do so again. Elias smiled faintly, the exhaustion in his features tempered by hope. "Then we finish what the Ketheri began." The decision was made, though the Council would not sanction it. Not yet. The Aurora's edge would depart quietly, chasing the trail of vanished people, carrying with the fragile flame of defiance. Humanity's first victory had not ended the war. It had only opened the door to battles yet to come. As the ship prepared for departure, Arya stood once more on the bridge, watching the stars wheel into position. Each point of light seemed less like a distant sun and more like a challenge, a reminder that the galaxy was vast, hostile, and waiting. Yet she felt no fear, only the steady pulse of determination. The Soren had expected silence, submission, the slow erasure of yet another civilization. Instead, they had found resistance. Humanity had been noticed, and now they would not vanish quietly into the dark. Arya closed her eyes for a moment, hearing the faint hum of the engines beneath her feet. The journey ahead promised peril, but also purpose. When she opened them again, the stars stretched before her, infinite and unyielding, and she knew the fight was only beginning.